Three, two, one.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone-stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Grok Talk.
Welcome back to Grok Talk. My name is Steve McDonald. I'm here with Skip Murphy, Mike Rogers, and Max Abramson. Our guest from the last segment has stuck around to continue the conversation. We'd like to remind you to check us out on Spreaker, Stitcher Radio, iTunes, TuneIn, and iHeartRadio. We're also on YouTube and Ustream. You can see what we do at GraniteGrok.com. Bloggers extraordinary. Some of us award-winning bloggers at that. Many of us writing for other blogs and organizations across the country. And, of course, we are on Facebook and Twitter. Right?
Yep.
Okay, good. Let's move forward. Our next guest was on the show in April of 2014. She is, her tagline is, appropriately, a healthcare refugee from Canada, which is true, and she's come here given her expertise. Recently, CNS News had an article. We'd like to welcome Shona Holmes to the show. Good morning.
Thank you so much for having me back.
Yep, it's great to have you. I'm like, we're going to have Shona on, and I'm like, oh, wait. She's been on the show before. I got to go back and listen to that because I know we talked to you about this, and you've got a new article out here. And the thing that caught my attention was this: according to a new survey, Canada ranks last among 11 OECD countries in the last survey on how quickly Canadians can actually get to see their family physicians.
Pretty sad, isn't it?
Yes, and
in
here
fact,
we are.
The headlines of our paper just last week were for the area that I'm in, and I'm in an area with well-populated hospitals. You were looking at approximately 2 years for most surgeries now.
Ooh, man.
Yeah.
All right, so
imagine if you needed your car fixed and they said to you, listen, we'll see you in 2 years. How many people would do it? How many people would wait 2 years to get their car fixed? But they will to get their knee replaced or their hip done, or it just blows my mind.
But if you had to go to a government dealership to get your Moskvich fixed, you might wait 2 years.
Exactly, and that's the whole point. We could stop the interview right now.
Yep.
Do not let the government take over your health care, because that's exactly what happens.
It is horrible. So, well, obviously, the United States has embraced Obamacare. We're on this road. Is there any hope for Canada? Is there any hope for us? What do you think?
Well, you know what? I'm so frustrated because I don't really believe there is a lot of hope for Canada. You're looking at, I'm the constitutional challenger. I'm fighting the province of Ontario just for the right, just think about it for a minute, just the right to be able to purchase private health insurance or put down cash on the table in order to have myself or my family members being taken care of. And we're just not allowed to do it. It is against the law, and I and any doctor that would participate in that type of activity would be penalized very, very harshly. You're talking jail time, whatever. So, it is just amazing that they get away with it and that Canadians put up with it. But I know from the Americans that I've done a lot of work with, they won't tolerate it. And so now's the time to speak out to stop it.
Yeah, you said, and the other half of that paragraph I was reading is that this is a growing problem in our government-run healthcare system, which focuses more and more on people into waiting rooms and local emergency departments. And the premise here is that this has become about health insurance, not health care.
Absolutely, and that's the whole thing that Obamacare was about, and the Affordable Health Care Act, if we're going to be politically correct. And I don't think people are finding it very affordable. And the other thing that I think is so important that your listeners understand is that health care to a Canadian is very, very different than health care to an American, because health care to a Canadian doesn't include dental. It doesn't include any drugs or any rehabilitative services whatsoever. Eye care, hearing, anything like that. So, the average family of four pays about $15,000 a year in taxes, not to mention we've been paying over $4 a gallon for gas for years now, and the same, $4 a gallon for milk. So all of those things, every single dime you spend in Canada, a portion of your money goes to healthcare costs. And what happens when the government runs out of your money? They they either tax you more or they reduce your services.
So I know Mark Stein talks about this stuff a lot, being a Canadian and a New Hampshire resident to boot, and I find it very amusing to read what he writes, and it's because of the way he writes. You're right, it's awful. It's like a big joke, and it really kind of is a big joke, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's funny because the doctors will try and appease you to say, listen, it's not that bad. You'll come out right and say, what is the wait time? What am I looking at? And they'll say, well, listen, first we'll put in a recommendation you see such and such a specialist. But let's run this test first. So you're about 3 or 4 weeks to wait maybe for a certain test. I went for an MRI 10 years ago when I first started speaking out. The MRI that I needed, my wait time was 9 weeks. I was reordered that same MRI this year, and the wait time was 5 months and 20 days. So it's now gone up to almost 6 months to wait for that MRI. So, depending on whether or not it's an X-ray, you might be looking at, 3 weeks to get an X-ray. An MRI, you're looking at 6 months. So they'll send you for that test, and then when those test results are in, they'll say, oh, okay, well, we'll just maybe need this test, and they send you for that. Nothing runs in conjunction with one another, and then finally you get to the point where they can send you to the specialist, and then they'll say, listen, if you don't hear from their office within 3 or 4 weeks, call me back and I'll get on it. Before you know it, you are over a year just waiting for the specialist to call you back. And then the government doesn't even count that time on wait times because by obligation they have to monitor what wait times are. So people can be a year getting into a specialist and then 2 years for surgery on top of that. It's criminal. It's absolute criminal.
There was an interesting parallel to what you just mentioned there about starting and stopping the clock. In the UK, they decided to monitor and publicize how long it took for people to be seen at emergency rooms. They fixed that very easily. They had the ambulances wait away from the emergency rooms and come in with the almost dead patient when there was a chance they'd get seen within the time limit.
And exactly, these are the things that need to be exposed. And you and I both know it happens. This is what they do. And you have it happening with your VA hospitals right now. And fortunately for you, the newspapers will cover the stories about the VA hospitals. Here, you don't get any coverage whatsoever of this sort of thing. It's just our dirty little secret. I think there's a faster wait time at the border for people flying over the border just to get to a hospital.
And I'm glad you brought up the VA because it is really a disaster here when we've known about the scandals that have been going on, and we know that hundreds of thousands of veterans have now passed away. And nobody's treating it. The politicians, Obama will say, well, I'm going to concentrate on this. Well, yeah, he's concentrating on that just like he's pivoting to China and pivoting on economics. Yeah, yeah, that's about the only place where he really knows how to pivot, doesn't he,
yes.
Steve?
Yeah, use your hips. Okay.
But, you know what? It always comes down that government, once it takes something over, is going to try to use the stats any way that it has to. And if the stats don't make sense or they can't keep to the stats, they do everything under the radar to do it. Like, as you mentioned, the VA has just basically ripped up all of the applications or wait times and schedules and all that other stuff to where you get a black market within the government just to keep the stats right. But my real question to you is, in Canada, as we've seen over in Britain, and even though Mike is from there, I watched the NHS fiascos one after another. And one of the things that doesn't get publicized all that often is that not only is it the quality of visits going down, as you just related, but it's the quality of the staff that, frankly, you will be hearing an accent when you go to those hospitals. Are you seeing that same thing in Canada? And, I mean, we already see it here in the United States where, I'm getting to that age where I have to go more and more, and it's like I got to listen hard to figure out what they're saying.
Yes, and absolutely. You get the same thing here. And the worst part about it is nobody's being held accountable. The attitude that I get when I, make any kind of ruffle is that you should just be grateful. So be quiet, be grateful. You're not paying for it, which still blows my mind when people say that. And how dare you complain? Because if you complain, then you there's 60 other people in the waiting room that would gladly take your spot. So it really sort of beats you down into a submissive state because you have no choices. I ran into a similar situation that you were talking about there with having my MRI, and I had it done at midnight because they would run appointments till midnight just trying to get everybody in after, 6-month wait. And there was such a language barrier. I could not communicate. Even the questions they asked me, there was no communicating the answers to them because it was just blank looks on their faces. They had no idea what I was saying either. And it's very frustrating, very, very frustrating, and very hard on the patient because, like I said, I tend to not be a person that just stays quiet, but when you're in that situation, you're really forced that you have to because there's no alternative.
Shauna, we're going to take a really short break. Stay on the line. We'll be right back. This is Grok Talk.